being able to correctly identify the chord and its inversion in any four-part texture is critical in any analysis that you might do. So I'm going to show you just a couple different ways that you could do it, or rather just one way that you can do it that hopefully might simplify things. So first off, here are two chords within a chorale texture. It almost doesn't matter what those chords are or even what key we're in, because right now we're just looking to identify the chord and its inversion. So first things first, let's take a look at this first one right here. You'll notice in a four-part texture, there are two types of chords that you'll come across for the most part, the triad and the seventh chord. Triad has 3 different pitches, while a seventh chord will have 4 different pitches. Not always, but most of the time, or at least much of the time. A triad will always only have 3 different pitches, so of course, in a 4-part texture, at least one of those pitches is going to be doubled. So your first step, if you're to identify what this chord is and its inversion, is to identify what the chord is to begin with. And so we're going to take a look at each one of these pitches. It sort of doesn't matter where you begin, but you could start from the top. So we have a B. We have a B here, and a D. Okay, so far so good. 2 different pitches. We have a G, and then we have another G. Okay, great. So we have a note doubled. The G is doubled itself. And so now we've identified all the pitches. And now your next step after this is to determine what the root is. In order for us to know what the inversion is and what the chord is, we need to find the root. Best thing to do is you're going to eliminate the extra note in some sense, but you're going to stack this into root position, which will look like line, 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 or space, 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 depending if you're doing it in bass clef or treble clef or where on the staff you're going to do, but in close position, root position and in close position. So we're just going to start from the top and add chords to it. So I'm going to draw the B. We have the B here, and we have the D. Now the D originally was down here, but that looks like that's going to be on a space. So either we move the B or we move the D so it's on a line. And we're going to move the D above so that's on a line. Okay, so now we have a line, line. So we have the B and D on a line and a line. And finally we're going to add the G. Okay. We definitely don't want to put it up there because that's on a space, so indicating it's not in root position. So we're going to put it down here. So we have a nice G major chord. Okay. Or rather, we have a nice triad with a G root, a B third, and a D fifth. Okay, now we know this is in root position. When we look at this, we recognize as B, D, F. If you know your triads, that's a G major chord. And so we know this is a G major chord, and we know it's in root position because the root of this chord is also the bass note of this chord. And remember, again, the bass note is the lowest note in the chord. Okay, so not just the lowest note in the staff, in a grand staff, it's going to be the lowest note in the bass clef. Sometimes not always the bass clef, but it's usually going to be the bass clef. So we know this is a G major chord in root position. All right, let's do this one more time, and this time with this next chord. I'll go a little bit quicker with a little less explanation to go through the steps. So first, we're going to ID the notes. So we have C. So we have a C here, another C, a G, and an E. Great. So we have C, C, E, and G. We have C, C, E, C, C, G, and E. All right, now we're going to go over here. I'm going to rewrite this again in close position, and all lines are all spaces within an octave of each other. So let's start with the C. I'm going to put the C here. It's nice and simple. We have the other C, so we don't need to rewrite it. We have a G, so I'm going to put the G in the closest space, which is going to be up there, and then the E in the closest space. Oops. Perfect. So now we have C, E, G. So we have a C major triad. Now the C is the root of this chord, but we'll notice the E is the bass note. So this means it's not in root position. It's actually in an inversion. And remember that the inversion with the third, the E in this case is the third, is first inversion, also known as 6, if you write using the BPS or figured bass. Okay, So hopefully that will help you master the steps of identifying four-part texture and identifying the chord, what the chord is, as well as the inversion. So first step is ID the notes. I would recommend writing the note names right next to it. First step is ID the notes. Second step is to rewrite those notes into root position, close position, root position. All lines are all spaces within an octave of each other. And then finally, once you've done that, you know what the root is, and you can identify the root, and then you can compare it to the bass. And if they match, obviously it's in root position, and if they don't, then we know it's in an inversion of some sort. Hopefully that helps a bit.